My name is Romy Hart, I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how my sister's wedding forced me to confront what I meant to my own family, and how a stranger reminded me what I was truly worth. If you enjoy real-life stories like mine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. When the invitation arrived, I almost mistook it for junk mail. Heavy ivory cardstock, embossed lettering, my name printed in gold script that looked too elegant to be mine. Miss Romy Hart, you are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Elani Hart and Daniel Brooks at the Monterey Coast Estate, Saturday, June 10th, Monterey. Of course, it would be somewhere dramatic, cliffs, ocean breeze, the kind of place that photographs well from every angle. My sister Elani had always known how to curate perfection. The handwriting inside wasn't hers, though. It was our mother's, written in the practiced loops she used for Christmas cards and thank you notes to neighbors she didn't like. Hope you can make it. The family's all so excited. Love, Mom. No, we. Just the family. That subtle exclusion. It wasn't new. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter and watched the afternoon light fade through the blinds, the golden edges of the paper glowing like it was mocking me. I hadn't spoken to Elani properly in over a year. Our last conversation, if you could call it that, ended with her saying, "Not everything has to be about you, Romy." It was after she'd posted her engagement photos, the ones where she wore a designer gown just to announce the proposal. She'd invited me to like it online, not in person. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I had work, deadlines, responsibilities, all the usual excuses. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to be there if it meant sitting invisible again. Growing up, invisibility had been my family's favorite game. Dad coached Elani's soccer team and never missed a game. Mom organized every fundraiser and printed Elani's name in bold on the donation banners. Meanwhile, I learned to be small, to listen more than I spoke, to make my own birthday cakes when Mom forgot the flour again. Elani had always sparkled, golden-haired, confident, the kind of girl who filled a room like sunlight. I was the shadow beside her. Even now, at 29, I could still hear Dad's voice when I got accepted into my first job at a publishing house. "Books don't pay bills, sweetheart. Maybe your sister can find you something stable in marketing?" He'd said it half laughing, half serious, the Hart family specialty. I stared at the invitation again. The paper smelled faintly of vanilla, the expensive kind that reminded me of my mother's perfume. The RSVP card was due that week. I turned it over in my hands before finally checking the small, polite box, "Accepts with pleasure, Eli," neatly written in black ink. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of avoidance. Mom's texts trickled in, each one layered with guilt disguised as excitement. "Elani found the perfect dress. You'll love it. Your father's writing his toast. You should hear it. Hilarious. Can you bring that navy dress you wore to Uncle Frank's retirement party?" Something understated. Something understated. I knew what that meant. Don't outshine your sister. Not that I ever could. The night before the trip, I sat on the edge of my bed, suitcase open, staring at the navy dress folded neatly inside. It was simple, sleeveless, knee-length, something you wear when you don't want to draw attention. My phone buzzed. A no number. "Hey, Romy, it's Elani. Just wanted to say, no pressure about tomorrow. Come if you can. If not, I understand, no pressure." As if she didn't know I'd already RSVP'd weeks ago. As if understand wasn't just another way to say you're optional. I typed 3 words before deleting them. "See you tomorrow." Then I closed the phone, turned off the light, and tried not to dream about being invisible. The morning of the wedding arrived like a photograph, crisp blue sky, seagulls tracing lazy circles over the cliffs. The drive from my small apartment in Oakland took 3 hours, winding through coastal roads where the ocean stretched endlessly beside me. I'd rehearsed what I'd say if anyone asked about work, about life. My job at a small publishing firm wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My apartment was small but quiet. My friends were real, even if my family barely knew their names. The GPS announced, "You have arrived," as the estate came into view. White columns, glass walls, rows of manicured lavender leading toward a courtyard framed by the Pacific. Dozens of luxury cars lined the driveway. I parked at the far end, where the dirt road met wild grass. A valet approached, all smiles. "Miss Hart?" "Yeah," I forced a polite smile. "The other Hart," he chuckled, probably not understanding what I meant, and handed me a small program tied with a silk ribbon inside. Everything gleamed, white flowers, crystal glasses, laughter echoing through the open-air tent. My mother spotted me first, Romy. Her voice was bright, almost rehearsed. She kissed the air near my cheek. "You made it. Look at you, simple and elegant, perfect. Hi, Mom. Dad appeared next, adjusting his tie. Romy, there's our quiet achiever, quiet achiever. That was his nickname for me, the one that meant not as successful, but polite enough not to complain. You look great, I said automatically. They were both dressed to match the decor, beige and blush tones. Effortless wealth. Elani's about to come down for photos, Mom said. You can wait with the cousins. She pointed toward a cluster of people near the champagne bar. People I barely knew, laughing like they'd been best friends forever. I nodded, clutching my small purse like an anchor, and slipped into the background. That's where I stayed most of the morning. Background music to someone else's melody. When the ceremony began, rows of white chairs lined the cliffside overlooking the ocean. A seating chart hung near the entrance, calligraphy so ornate I had to squint to read it. Bride's family, front rows. I searched for my name. Not there. I traced my finger down, heart thudding faster. Guest seating. There it was, near the bottom, printed neatly between table 19, miscellaneous guests. A polite way of saying leftovers. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile at the usher who led me to my seat. 2 rows from the back. Alone. The view was perfect, though. I could see the ocean, the sunset, the stage where Elani would soon walk down the aisle. Perfect, I thought bitterly. Perfect view of a family that never saw me. As guests filed in, I caught glimpses of familiar faces, uncles, aunts, neighbors who'd known us since childhood. Each one greeted my parents, my sister, the groom's family. Not one of them came to me. I heard snippets of conversation carried on the wind. Elani looks like a movie star. Her sister's here too, right? Oh, what's her name again? I didn't flinch anymore when people forgot my name. That muscle had long gone numb. Then I saw her, Elani, walking toward the altar, sunlight catching the lace of her gown. She looked beautiful, radiant, ethereal even. For a second I felt proud and small and envious all at once. When she passed by, her eyes caught mine. Just for a second, a flicker of something, guilt maybe. Then she smiled, picture perfect, and looked away. The ceremony was flawless. The vows, the violin, the doves released at the final kiss. Applause erupted like fireworks, and I sat there, clapping, smiling, pretending my throat wasn't tight. When everyone rose to head toward the reception tent, a staff member gently asked, "Ma'am, are you at the bride's party or the guest list?" I hesitated. The correct answer was both. The real answer was neither. Guest list, I said softly. He nodded and pointed me toward the back row of tables, near the catering station. That's where my name card waited. Romy Hart, single, isolated, and forgotten among the extras. By the time the reception began, the sun had started to dip below the cliffs. Golden light spilled across the ocean, turning everything to amber, the kind of sunset photographers dream about. People gathered around the open bar, champagne glasses raised, laughter echoing above the sound of waves. I sat at table 19, my name card standing politely among empty chairs. The other seats were labeled with names I didn't recognize. Mr. and Mrs. Halverson, Eli Moreno, guest of groom, a table for the overflow. For the people who didn't quite fit anywhere else, a server placed a flute of champagne in front of me. "Would you like to start with that?" he asked gently, as if sensing I didn't belong. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded and walked away. I glanced toward the main tables at the front, where my family sat close to the couple. Mom's laughter floated through the air, light, rehearsed. Dad's arm rested proudly on the back of Elani's chair. From here, they looked like a magazine spread, glowing, perfect, and touchable. Every so often, Elani would turn her head, scanning the room. Once, her gaze met mine across the tent. I lifted my glass slightly in silent acknowledgement. She smiled, quick and small, before someone, probably Mom, leaned in to whisper something that made her laugh again. The smile didn't reach her eyes. I tried to focus on the music instead. A jazz trio playing near the stage. The melody was gentle, familiar. It reminded me of late nights in college, headphones on, editing papers while the world outside kept spinning. I looked down at my plate, untouched salad. Perfect slices of avocado arranged like petals. Around me, strangers filled the table one by one, couples mostly. They greeted each other with polite enthusiasm, then looked at me, the solitary one. "You here for the bride or the groom?" a woman asked, adjusting her sequined wrap. "Bride," I said. "Oh, how lovely. You must know her well." Then I hesitated. "She's my sister." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. Really, I had no idea. She's been talking so much about her family, but she never mentioned she had a sister. I smiled tightly. "That sounds like her." The woman's smile faltered. But she turned back to her husband, whispering something that ended in a polite laugh. That's when I felt it. The wave of isolation that hits right after the small talk ends. The kind that makes you hyper-aware of your own breathing, of the empty seat beside you, of the fact that no one is coming to fill it. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed under the table. Text from Mom. Can you grab some photos of the decorations from your angle? We might use them for the neighborhood newsletter. Of course. Not how are you doing? Or are you having fun? Just a request for content. I typed back, sure, then I angled my camera toward the floral centerpiece and snapped a few photos, mechanical, detached. The speeches began. Dad stood first, voice booming through the microphone. He started with a joke about how he always knew Elani would marry someone as ambitious as she is beautiful, which earned applause. Then he talked about her resilience, her achievements, her smile that could light up a stadium. People laughed and clinked glasses. No mention of me, not a single word. When Elani's turn came, she thanked her parents for teaching her what love looks like. Then she thanked her friends for standing by her side through everything. Her voice wavered slightly, and for a moment, I thought she might say my name. She didn't. By dessert, I was ready to leave. The music had turned upbeat. People were dancing, couples swaying under string lights that glittered like stars. I was halfway to the exit when a voice stopped me. Excuse me, someone said softly. I turned. He stood near the back, one hand in his pocket, holding a glass of whiskey in the other, dark hair loosely combed, crisp shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. The kind of man who didn't look like he belonged here either. Not in a suit. Not in this perfect world. I think you're at my table, he said, glancing toward table 19, Henry Cole. I blinked. Oh, sorry. I didn't think anyone was sitting there. Most people don't, he said, smiling faintly. It's the table for the misfits. I laughed before I could stop myself. Seems that way. He walked over, setting his glass down as he pulled out the chair beside me. I was told this was the best view in the house, he said, nodding toward the ocean. It is, I admitted, at least for the sunset. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the horizon fade from gold to violet. So, he said after a while, bride or groom? Bride, same sort of. I went to college with Daniel. He said there'd be good food, bad dancing, and an open bar. He wasn't wrong. I smiled. You sound like you've been to a lot of weddings. Too many, he said. Always as a guest, never as the story. Something in the way he said it made me glance at him again. He didn't look lonely exactly, just quiet, like someone who knew how silence felt. So what about you? He asked. How do you know Elani? She's my sister. His eyebrows rose. Seriously, you don't look related. Yeah, I said dryly. That's the general consensus. He hesitated. You sound like that's not a compliment. It's not, I said, then exhaled. Sorry, that came out sharper than I meant. He shook his head. Don't apologize. Weddings do weird things to people. The band started another song, slower this time, the kind meant for couples who'd had just enough wine to feel sentimental. Henry glanced toward the dance floor. I think we're the only ones not dancing, he said. Good, I replied. I'm terrible at it, he grinned. That's what everyone says right before they're not. I laughed again, quietly this time, the kind of laugh that feels rusty from disuse. A waiter passed with refills. Henry lifted his glass toward mine. To surviving family events, he said. I clinked my champagne against his. Barely. We talked for the next hour, about nothing and everything. He worked in architecture, lived in San Diego, and had a dog named Murphy who apparently hated fireworks. I told him about my job at the publishing firm, about the chaos of working on deadlines that never end. At one point, he asked, so what's your book? My what? Everyone in publishing has one. The secret project. The thing they're afraid to admit they're writing. I hesitated. Then I smiled. Maybe someday. He nodded, as if he understood the weight of unspoken dreams. As the night deepened, the crowd around us blurred into background noise. Someone shouted for the newlyweds to kiss again. Champagne overflowed. The DJ switched to something nostalgic. Henry leaned closer so I could hear him. Your family's at the head table, right? Yeah, they haven't looked this way all night. I stiffened slightly. You noticed? I notice a lot of things. He looked down at his drink. Like how you keep checking the door every few minutes. I swallowed hard. Old habit. He waited, not pushing, just giving space. My family's complicated, I said finally. They love me, I guess. They just don't see me. He nodded slowly. That sounds lonely. It is. The words left my mouth before I could take them back. We sat in silence for a long time after that. The kind of silence that doesn't need fixing. When the slow song ended, Henry set down his glass and stood. Come on, where? He extended his hand. Dance with me. I froze. No, I told you, I'm terrible. I know, he smiled. So am I, perfect match. For a moment, the world tilted, laughter, music, lights blurring around the edges. Then I placed my hand in his, and he led me to the dance floor. We didn't talk. Didn't need to. His hand rested gently against my back, steady and warm. I let him lead, awkward at first, then slowly finding rhythm, not in the music, but in the moment when I finally looked up. He was smiling, not the practiced kind I saw all night, but something real. At the edge of the dance floor, I caught my mother watching, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned toward Dad and said something. He turned, glanced at me, and whispered back. Their eyes moved away before mine did, but for once, it didn't sting as much, because Henry's voice cut through the noise. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, I think I am. When the music ended, people clapped. Henry bowed slightly, half joking. See? Not terrible, not terrible. I agreed. We laughed, breathless. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel invisible. Later that night, the ocean wind turned sharp and cold. The guests had moved indoors for the after-party, where laughter and music tangled in the air like perfume and secrets. Henry and I stood outside, near the railing that overlooked the dark water. The lights from the tent painted the waves gold at the edges. It felt like standing at the edge of two worlds, the one that sparkled for everyone else, and the one that stayed quiet for people like me. He handed me his jacket without asking. You're freezing. I'm fine, I said. Though I wasn't. You're shivering. Fine, I repeated, but I let him drape it over my shoulders anyway. It smelled faintly of cedar and salt air. He leaned beside me, elbows on the railing. Beautiful view, he said. I nodded. It's the best thing about tonight. That bad? I hesitated. It's just, weddings have a way of showing you where you stand. He didn't ask what I meant. He just waited. That was what struck me most about Henry. He didn't rush the silence. He treated it like something valuable. After a moment, I said quietly, they put me at the extras table. He blinked. Extras, people who don't fit anywhere, random guests, plus one distant cousin. And me, he frowned. Your sister's wedding. And your table 19, near the catering station. Wow, he said softly. That's cold. I shrugged, trying to sound detached. That's my family. He studied me for a moment. And you still came. I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe it'd be different this time. The wind whipped a strand of hair across my face. Henry reached out and gently tucked it behind my ear. The gesture was so simple, so casual, that I almost forgot to breathe. Hope's a brave thing, he said, or stupid, sometimes both. We watched the waves crash below, the white foam dissolving into black water. Somewhere behind us, people cheered. The newlyweds must have cut the cake. I wondered if Elani even noticed I wasn't there. Can I ask you something? Henry said after a long pause. Sure. What would happen if you stopped trying to make them see you? I turned toward him, startled. What do you mean? I mean, you showed up, you did everything right. You're here, looking like you belong. But they're the ones who keep treating you like you don't. What if you stopped chasing their version of family? The question hit harder than I expected. I don't know, I said finally. Maybe I'm scared of what's left if I stop trying. He nodded like he understood. I get that. I spent half my 20s trying to impress my dad. He was a contractor, wanted me to take over his business. I wanted architecture, said it was too soft. What happened? He died before I graduated. Never saw a single thing I built. His voice didn't crack, but something in his eyes did. I used to think I'd feel peace if I made it big enough, he said, but success doesn't fill silence. It just echoes in it. I swallowed hard. That's exactly it. A few seconds passed before I whispered, I don't think my sister's a bad person. I didn't say she was. She just plays the part they wrote for her, the golden one. The daughter who gets everything right. And you, I was the one who made things complicated. He turned toward me, his expression soft but steady. Maybe you were just the one who told the truth. I didn't respond. My throat was too tight. Inside the tent, Elani's voice came through the speakers, laughing. Bright, the DJ was announcing their first dance as a married couple. Henry looked toward the lights. You should be up there with them. Trust me, they'd prefer I wasn't. He hesitated, then smiled. Then stay here, the view's better. So we stayed, to silhouettes framed by wind and water somewhere behind us. Applause erupted again. I closed my eyes, listening, realizing how empty it sounded from here. A while later, I checked my phone, a single text from Mom. Where did you disappear to? everyone's asking. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Outside. No reply. Henry saw the screen. You don't have to answer, I know, I said, but if I don't, she'll make it my fault. He nodded slowly. Sounds familiar. The ocean roared louder now. The tide rising with the moon. Henry leaned back against the railing. You ever notice, he said, how families pretend love means control? I glanced at him. Yeah. In mine, love means entrance. He laughed softly. That's bleak, it's true. He looked at me then, really looked. Then maybe it's time to stop enduring. Something shifted between us. Small, but unmistakable. The kind of stillness that carries possibility. For the first time in a long while. I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. We walked back toward the tent later. The music fading into the hum of crickets and ocean air. People were dancing again. Drinks flowing freely. When we reached the entrance, Henry stopped. You want to go back in? He asked. I shook my head. Not really. Good. He said, let's go somewhere else. We ended up at the edge of the property, where the cliffs dropped into darkness. A narrow trail led to a small overlook with a single wooden bench. We sat side by side. The cold biting at our fingers. Henry pulled out a small metal flask. Too bad tables and good company, he said, offering it. I took a cautious sip. Whiskey. Smooth and warm. We talked about small things, music. Places we wanted to visit. How he once built a model bridge out of coffee stirrers in high school. The conversation flowed easily, like we'd known each other longer than 2 hours. When the music finally stopped and the tent lights dimmed, Henry checked his watch. It's late, he said quietly. Yeah, he stood, brushing sand from his shoes. I should probably find my ride, right? We lingered, awkward in the way you do when something important is ending before you're ready. Then he said, can I tell you something? Sure. I don't think you should disappear tonight. I frowned. What do you mean, tomorrow? When they talk about the wedding, the photos, the toasts, they'll forget a lot of faces. Don't let yours be one of them. The words caught me off guard. They always forget, then make it impossible to. I smiled faintly. You make that sound easy. It's not, he said, but you don't strike me as someone who does easy. He started to walk away, then turned back. I'm in room 200 for if you ever need to talk before you leave. I nodded. Thanks, Henry. He smiled, that quiet, knowing smile again, and disappeared down the path. I stood there for a long time, watching the waves crash below. His jacket still around my shoulders, somewhere behind me. Laughter drifted from the fading party, and for the first time that day, I didn't feel like running. The morning after the wedding smelled like salt and stale champagne. Seagulls circled above the cliffs, their cries slicing through the heavy stillness that follows celebration. From my hotel window, I could still see the reception tent, half dismantled. Now petals scattered across the lawn like forgotten applause. I'd slept barely 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, Henry's voice echoed, don't let them forget you. 1. Breakfast with ghosts. When I walked into the breakfast hall, the first thing I saw was Elani. She was glowing even without the makeup, surrounded by relatives who looked at her like she was still wearing the gown. Mom waved me over with the same polished smile she'd used all weekend. Romy, there's coffee left, dear. I poured a cup and sat down. No one made space beside them, so I found a seat at the end. Near the buffet, same distance as last night. Elani noticed me eventually. Hey, you disappeared after dinner. I went outside for some air. She laughed lightly. You always were the quiet one. The table chuckled as if that were an endearing joke. I smiled too, because that's what you do when you've learned that truth makes people uncomfortable. Dad clapped a hand on Elani's shoulder. You were radiant, honey. Everyone said so, even the mayor's wife asked about you. Then, glancing down the table toward me, he added, and Romy. Thanks for coming. I know you're busy. That was it, my acknowledgement. A footnote in someone else's headline. I folded my napkin carefully, placed it beside the untouched plate, and stood. I should get going. Long drive ahead. Mom frowned. You're not staying for photos, no? I think you've got plenty. I kissed her cheek, polite, distant, and walked out before my voice could shake. 2. The driven coastal highway stretched empty ahead of me. Waves crashed below the cliffs. Rhythm steady as a heartbeat. I replayed the night in my mind. Elani's laughter, my father's toast. Henry's question, what would happen if you stopped trying to make them see you? For the first time, the idea didn't feel like surrender. It felt like release. 3. room 204 halfway to the freeway. I pulled over at a lookout point, my hands were trembling, not from anger but clarity. Then I turned the car around. Henry answered the door in a t-shirt, hair still damp from the shower. He blinked in surprise. Romy, I exhaled. You said not to disappear. He smiled, that slow, patient smile that reached his eyes. Come in. The room smelled of coffee and sea air. I sat on the armchair while he poured me a cup from the tiny hotel pot. I didn't expect to see you again, he said. Neither did I. We sat in silence, sipping coffee that tasted faintly of cardboard. Outside, the ocean glimmered through the balcony door. I left before the family photos. I said, good for you. I'm not sure they even noticed, maybe not, but you did. He leaned forward. You did something brave yesterday. I laughed softly. I danced with a stranger at my sister's wedding. That's not brave, that's reckless. He shook his head. No, you stayed. You didn't run from being unseen. That takes guts. I looked at him for a long moment. How do you always know what to say? I don't, he admitted. I just say what I wish someone had told me. Double quotes for the call that afternoon. As I packed to leave, my phone buzzed. Elani. I hesitated before answering. Hey, she said. Her voice sounded smaller than usual. Can we talk? Sure, I saw you with that guy last night. You looked happy. I was. A pause, then softly. I didn't mean to make you feel left out, Romy. Everything was so busy. Mom and Dad. I know, I said. You don't have to explain. No, I do. Her voice cracked. I overheard Mom telling one of her friends you've always been independent, not emotional. I think I believe that, but you're not made of stone, are you? I smiled sadly. No, but I learned how to survive like one. She sniffled. I'm sorry. The words were clumsy, late but real, and for once, that was enough. 5 letters to myself back home. My apartment felt different, lighter somehow. I opened my laptop, meaning to check work emails, but ended up writing something else, a letter to myself. Dear Romy, you don't need to shrink to fit their version of love. You showed up, you spoke softly but didn't vanish. That's enough. When I finished, I printed it and taped it inside the cupboard door where I'd see it every morning. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a small Polaroid, me and Henry on the dance floor, mid-laugh, half-blurred, utterly real on the back. One line in his handwriting, sometimes pretending is just practice for the real thing. I didn't know what he meant until I read it again. Pretend you're with me. That's what he'd said when he found me alone. Maybe he hadn't meant pretend after all. 7 Monterey. 1 year later, the sky was overcast this time, the cliffs gray against restless water. I stood on the same overlook where we'd first talked, bundled in a wool coat. Next to me, Henry adjusted his camera, his fingers brushing mine like it was habit now. You sure you want this spot? He asked. I nodded. It's where it started. He smiled, pressing the shutter. The click echoed faintly in the wind. Not a portrait of a wedding guest this time, but of a woman who'd finally stepped into focus. 8. Closing narration for voiceover. When I think about that day, I don't remember the speeches or the flowers. I remember a man who noticed the woman sitting alone. I remember how it felt to be seen, not for who I was supposed to be, but for who I already was. Families can make you believe love is something you have to earn, but sometimes love finds you the moment you stop trying to prove you deserve it. My name is Romy Hart, and that's how I stopped disappearing. One wedding, one stranger, one dance at a time. End of story.